There's no doubt that Rough Trade were not only Canadian music pioneers in what they call the queer music scene across Canada. They were video pioneers, and they had the respect of all ages in Canada, a staple of much music, the new music, and boys, what an era they had together. Unfortunately, half of Rough Trade, Kevan Staples, has passed away. Now, Staples was passed away in recent days. Now, he was age of 74. Now, Rough Trade was a Canadian rock band centered on singer Carole Pope, and the multi-instrumentalist Kevan Staples. The band was noted for the provocative lyrics and stage antics. Singer Pope often performed in bondage attire. In their 1981 hit High School Confidential, one of the first explicitly lesbian-themed top 40 hits across the world. Crimes of Passion was a big hit, and All Touch No Contact. Now, the first iteration of the band was formed in 1968 in Toronto when Pope and Staples, who played keyboards and guitars, began performing at a folk group known as the O. Their musical partner in this venture was Clive Smith. In 1970, Smith left the group, and Pope and Staples changed their name to the Bullwhip Brothers, performing as a largely acoustic duo at Toronto art festivals and at private events. Now, in 1973, the band was renamed Rough Trade and was joined by percussionist Chris Faulkner, bass player Bob Jennings, and drummer Donnie McDougall. As would happen frequently going forward, the players supporting Pope and Staples were subject to sometimes wholesale change, and by 1974, the Pope-Staples duos were joined by Hap Roderman, Jane Cisani, Sharon Smith, and Marv Kanarek. The band, through their theatrical combination of rock, R&B, and raw sexuality, and Pope often performed in bondage attire, became a popular draw in Toronto's live music scene through their regular shows at Grossman's Tavern in Toronto. Now, Rough Trade was the first rock band to record a direct-to-disc album, with 76 Rough Trade Live, which, despite the title, was actually a studio recording. Each side was performed live without an audience all the way through, and cut directly to the mastering disc for greater audio fidelity. By this time, the band's lineup was Pope, Staples, Joanne Brooks, Rick Ratteau, Michael Fonfera, and Peter Hodgin. As would be the case throughout the band's entire career, the majority of the album songs were written by Pope and Staples. In the same year, Jeff Travis opened the first Rough Trade record shop in London, reportedly taking the appellation from the band. This eventually led to the formation of the similarly named Rough Trade Records in 1978. And of course, you don't know Rough Trade refers to a peculiarity of gay sex. Now, on December 1977, the band presented a newly created live musical called Restless Underwear, which co-starred Divine alongside the band, who by this time had added an additional backup singer, Lucy Martin Keys. The show, which played at Toronto's prestigious Massey Hall, was noted for its outrageous for the time's sexual satire. However, aside from Pope and Staples, the rest of the band quit after Restless Underwear had completed its one-show run in dispute over payment, as in nobody got paid. After a 6-month layoff, Pope and Staples rebuilt the band, adding several members for various events in 1978 and 1979. The group resumed playing regular Toronto shows, most often at the prestigious Horseshoe Tavern. In 1978, Tim Curry would issue a cover of the Rough Trade song Birds of a Feather for their 1978 direct-to-disc album. Pope and Staples were also time involved in writing music for film and television soundtracks. In 1978, they picked up a Genie Award for their work on the made-for-TV film One Night Stand. On February 14, 1980, the band performed a musical review, Restless Underwear, at Manhattan's Beacon Theatre. However, the event was promoted by the venue as a show by Divine, who in fact only sang 2 songs in a review, both in Act 2. As a result, the show was received poorly. Later that year, the band lineup was again reshuffled, settling into a stable 5-person lineup led by Pope and Staples. The band also performed the Canadian horror film Deadline that same year. Now, a new iteration of Rough Trade landed a record contract with True North Records in mid-80 and recorded the group's second album, Avoid Freud, which was released in October 1980. The official first single was the deliberately controversial What's the Furor About the Furor, but radio stations flipped the single over, and the B-side, Fashion Victim, became a top 40 hit in Canada. Now, the controversy surrounding the raunchy lesbian-themed second single, High School Confidential, helped propel the song into the Canadian top 20 and made the band overnight stars. They sang the song at a notable 81 appearance on SCTV, a prominent Canadian comedy show that also aired in the States. Now, the band's next album was 81's For Those That Think Young. The title was originally meant to be For Those That Think Young, a play in the early Avoid Freud LP, as well as a reference to Carl Jung. Although not as widely remembered as High School Confidential, today, the LP's first single, The Sexually Charged All Touch, was the band's most successful single on the Canadian charts during their career, hitting number 12. The release of both All Touch and its parent album was delayed by nearly a year in international markets, with All Touch taking the Australian Top 40 in January 83 and spending 40 weeks in the Top 100. And the videos were again very prominent, very well done. All Touch also became Rough Trade's only US chart hit, peaking at number 58 in early 83. Although the song widely was believed to have the potential to break into the top 40, the bankruptcy of the band's American distributor Boardwalk Records halted its progress on the charts as the single ceased to be available in stores. Now, during the recording of Rough Trade's 82 album Shaking the Foundations, two members left and were replaced by Howard A.E. and Jordan Anderson as unofficial members. By this point, the group was explicitly identifying the album credits as simply Pope and Staples, augmented by other musicians as needed on a track-by-track basis. Shaking the Foundation spawned a strong single, Crimes of Passion, which is sort of like a film noir type of power pop. Dusty Springfield, who was dating Carole Pope at the time, sang backing vocals on the album and who also covered two Rough Trade songs. That same year, the album White Heat. Many years, Pope would officially reveal that she and Springfield were dating at the time. Now, in 83, Rough Trade was offered a Pepsi commercial to air the Canadian market, but the ad was soon pulled from the airwaves, at Pepsi as the featured people wrapped in bandages and wearing tuxedos and sunglasses, similar to the Canadian musician NASA / Willow's permission. The same year, Pope duet with Paul Hyde on the Paola's top 10 Canadian hit, Never Said I Love You. However, Rough Trade's 83 album Weapons failed to place a single on the Canadian charts, marking the beginning of the group's commercial decline. Now, on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and Late Night with David Letterman, Martin Short recalled that one of his earliest performances, including being the opening act for Rough Trade in the early 80s. Now, in 84, the duo Pope and Staples were paired with new producer Terry Brown after having previously co-produced all their True North material with Gene Martinick. The duo was supported by session musicians in the studio, including a number of people, as well as guests as Del Bello and Neil Chapin of Pucca Orchestra. The band's 84 album, O Tempor or Mores, spun off two singles that brushed the Canadian Top 100, but would prove to be Rough Trade's final full-length original release. Of course, Carole was involved in the Canadian release single for African Famine. Now, they returned to a stable 5-person lineup in 84 for performance purposes, and this lineup would record a handful of new tracks for the greatest hits compilation, Birds of a Feather, in 85. Their final full-scale tour, Deep Six, in 86, took place in 86, although performed on a few local concert dates in Toronto in 87 and 88. Around the same time, their guitarist changed his stage name to Wild T and found modest fame as a solo artist in Canada. Now, after the final breakup in 88, Rough Trade performed several reunion shows with various personnel supporting Pope and Staples. Of course, Pope had a strong single career at the time, being recognized at the Juniors. Now, the first reunion show was in 94 in Toronto. Now, numerous mini tours occurred over the years. Now, since the breakup, Staples busied himself as a composer for film, TV, and theater, and lived in Toronto. Pope issued 2 EPs, 2 albums, and several singles. Her first full-length solo debut album, Transcend, was released in 2005, 20 years after her last full-length album with Rough Trade, which was followed by her second album, Landfall, which was released in 2011. Pope continues to play occasional shows across Canada, in LA and New York, and resides in West Hollywood. Unfortunately, on March 7th, 2019, Joanne Brooks, member of the band from 76 and 77, died from health complications. Now, in 2020, Pope and Staples reunited as Rough Trade to record and issue a new version of High School Confidential. Though billed as High School Confidential Fame Horror Mix, the track was a completely new recording rather than a remix. Now, on the 23rd of March, 2025, Staples, who was a founding Kevan Staples, was a founding member of the band alongside Carole Pope, died at age 74. Now, the the situation again with Rough Trade, ladies and gentlemen. What a career they had over the years, and the idea about Rough Trade, it was sort of like a band that everybody loved in Canada for obvious reasons. It wasn't just a gay band. It was just basically someone that, a very cerebral, like art rock is the best way I can say it. Now, for the 20 years that we're together, again, ladies and gentlemen, his passing, like I said, will be severely missed. Now, his death was announced again on March 24th, but he died on March 23rd. So, ladies and gentlemen, rest in peace, Kevan Staples. My condolences to Carole Pope and all the Rough Trade fans, which are millions across Canada. I want you, if you have never heard the band before, check the YouTubes of Crimes of Passion, High School Confidential, and No Contact. She was, the only way I can say this, ladies and gentlemen, if David Bowie was a lesbian, it would be Carole Pope. I mean, she had talent to burn, ladies and gentlemen. Very surreal, probably one of the smartest stars in Canadian music history. I've seen different interviews, George Stephanopoulos and stuff like that. Carole is just a tremendous icon of Canadian music. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here, with our Canadian tributes to artists that passed away, let us know what a like, comment, subscribe, or share.